good morning, afternoon, depending on where you're at. It is Tuesday the 12th of July 2022, and before I jump into this week and this super full moon that's happening tomorrow in the sign of Capricorn, I just wanted to say that last week, if you were looking for a video, there wasn't one. I was sick. I finally got COVID and it spread through my household like wildfire. And so I was not able to make one. And so if you were looking for one, I am so sorry. But if you want to stay up to date on stuff, you can go to the Facebook page for nonconformist conscience, because on there I am able to, last week, those of you who didn't check and knew that there wasn't going to be a video because you followed the Facebook page. So if you are wanting to stay up to date, that is the place that I will post stuff at. So I wanted to say I'm sorry. I wish that I could have, but if I'm not capable of doing something, I'm not going to, because this work is really important to me, and last week I just was not capable. I was not able. I did not feel good at all. So that's okay, because this week here I am. So I'm posting the written report, and it is going to go more into detail about this week's astrology. But for this video, I am going to keep it more in line with the super full moon happening in the sign of Capricorn. This is an extremely powerful and potent super new moon, and so I really wanted to talk about it and the aspects that are going to be going on in the archetypal nature and dynamics of that. So let us talk about Capricorn. And since this is a super full moon, I want to talk a little bit about that. So the super full moon, anyone who, does ritual or likes to work with the moon's phases, most of you know that a full moon is the most powerful moon to work with. It is really good for, it reveals the emotional content. So there's a lot of emotional energetics that we are able to get in touch with and in tap with that sometimes we're not able to. And so on a full moon, essentially it is when the sun is opposing the moon, and so the moon is the brightest. It's full. It is illuminated by its counterpart, the other luminary, the sun. And so it really sheds light on emotional dynamics that sometimes are a little bit harder for us to. And because this is a super full moon, this is, just think about it archetypally, it's going to be illuminating it in a super way, in a bigger, brighter way. So it's really important to speak on the archetypal nature of Capricorn. If this is a potent new moon, full moon, and a lot of us are going to be feeling this. In my opinion, I think a lot of us from the generations of, 1959 to 1962, that generation, and then the 1988 to 1991 generation of people, that kind of group, we all had our Saturn returns at the same time. And so I feel like a lot of us, the things that we were working either on our first Saturn return or our second one, depending on which generation, I have a sneaky suspicion that a lot of us are going to be feeling this heavily. Not only those generations, but also people who have something at this 21 degree mark of Capricorn or Cancer, or really in any of the cardinal signs. So that's going to be if you have something at Aries 21 or if you have something at Libra 21 or roundabouts there, you are going to be feeling this. And so what may be coming up? That is where we jump into this Capricorn archetype. So Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and its natural house is the 10th. And so when we're looking at the archetypal nature of Capricorn in someone's chart, we're going to be looking at Capricorn, Saturn, so where Capricorn is, what house cusp, and then we're also going to be seeing what's on the 10th house cusp if it's not Capricorn. And what does this mean? Well, this is really, Saturn is so powerful because I have a great teacher, Kristen. She's taught me about how Saturn colors everything of the chart, and it really does. It colors everything because it is the structure of our consciousness. And so how is that not going to color everything? It's how we've been conditioned. It's where in society we find ourselves, and it's where we take personal responsibility and authority of ourselves. This is also where we have our purpose in society. Each soul comes in here with a purpose as a way to function within the society it finds itself. Saturn is the consensus, so it is the majority of the population. Saturn is, along with Capricorn in the 10th house, is going to be where we are conditioned, where we experience judgments, and then where we experience shame and guilt from these judgments. And why does Capricorn and Saturn in the 10th house have to deal with judgment and kind of these heavier things? Well, if Saturn and Capricorn are the structure of our consciousness, here's where we see where external authority, so our parents, family, society, culture, and country, what the consensus there, what their beliefs are, how is that structuring how we're being conditioned. And so a lot of us with a lot of Capricorn in our charts, which is definitely going to be that 1980s to early 1990s, we're all going to be feeling this. This is really about working through judgments, so that stem from the conditioning. So with this super full moon happening in the sign of Capricorn, a lot of us are going to be looking at or understanding deep lessons in responsibility and personal authority, and learning about how our conditioning and the judgments of the society and the culture and the family that we grew up in has maybe been crystallized and is getting in the way of us forging a new path of that is more stable and in alignment with who we naturally are. Capricorn is going to be dealing with things that naturally occur. And so that's where the judgment can come in. If there are things that are naturally occurring within us, and society or mom and dad or the country you find yourself in is essentially conditioning you or others around you to feel guilty for things that are naturally occurring within you, there can be a deep sense of judgment and shame that induces. Feeling like I can't be me because I'm being judged. This is a huge Capricorn dynamic. And so if this is the society and our family that we find ourselves in this culture and all of these things, well, here in the sign of Capricorn, we find gender roles, gender issues, race. Capricorn actually as an archetype is the archetype of melanin. There are society's values and views and judgments based upon how they're classifying race or class. It is how society or family or religion, these are all things, any type of external authority, religion, society, culture, country, parents, boss, things like that, are the conditioning factors that we're dealing with. And so if we grow up and maybe we're gay and we are a queer person, and the society in which we find ourselves or the family that we find ourselves in, especially if there's a lot of religious conditioning, we feel like I can't be me. I am being judged for being me. And so it creates guilt and shame because we feel like we have to repress who we are. It's not safe to be me, even though it's the most natural thing in the world. Here we find issues around trans rights, right? These are gender issues. So maybe mom and dad don't understand how I'm feeling and what gender dysphoria is, and they're telling me that this is a phase. And so I'm essentially being conditioned to not be who I am. These are the types of issues that we're dealing with here. We're dealing with, if society looks at a black person as bad or a monster, and people are conditioned to think about this, we are dealing with how that judgment has induced guilt and shame and that demographic of people. So for a lot of us, we are really wanting to evolve and break out of these crystallized structures that have formed based around this deep conditioning. And it is lifetimes. It's not just this one for that, especially my generation, that much Capricorn. We are here because we are wanting to break away from what judgments are and learn what natural judgment is. Because natural judgment helps us evolve and it helps us grow. Natural judgment isn't necessarily being judgmental in a mean way. Natural judgment is being able to have discernment. And so what can be coming up for so many of us right now is really digging deep and understanding what judgments that we are carrying around of other peoples that have been conditioned into us that are making us feel shame and guilt about just being who we are. And the thing about Capricorn, if it's going to be expressed naturally, it's going to take responsibility. I am my own person. I am sovereign. I am able to walk into this world and I have a right to exist. And so there are so many people coming out right now talking about these issues that have to deal with judgment. There is a square that is still taking place with Saturn and the nodes. And the reason why I bring this up is because Saturn is the ruler of this super full moon. Saturn is in the sign of Aquarius, and you guys have heard me talk about how Saturn here in this sign, this is really about the liberation of breaking free from the crystallized structures from society, and the things that get in the way of you spiritualizing and connecting on a deeper level. And this is really about seeing the things in the world that for a long time people have not been wanting to see, what the consensus has not been wanting us to see. Saturn in Aquarius as an archetype is here to help further the collective conscious. And how do we do that? Well, it starts with me first, and it starts with you, and you have to observe, which is a very Aquarian kind of thing. You have to observe yourself, and you start having to ask yourself questions that help with objectivity. So asking, you know, is this my judgment or is this learned judgment? Is this conditioned guilt or is this natural guilt? And the flip side of Saturn and Aquarius can be if you are an evolutionary astrologer or study it the Jeffrey Wolf Green way, you are going to understand that this is the archetype of what we call a social dinosaur. So these are people who don't want change. They think the best way is for things to stay how they've always been. These are the people who have deep held beliefs, and so it creates a dissonance to where even if they are brought forth evidence that their belief is not in alignment with natural law and truth that is timeless in nature, they are so crystallized and held on to this belief that they will make excuses, and they have every thing in the book that they want to say as to why their belief is the only belief. And so we can see how this is happening in society, and because we can see this is happening in society, we also know that as a way to further the collective consciousness, there are some of us brave souls who are going and working through these types of things on a personal level. There can be so much confusion that comes about, and especially on this day, the 13th, with the super full moon, because not only is there a super full moon, there's also an aspect pattern called a mystic rectangle. And so a mystic rectangle is where a planet or planets trine one, and then that one sextiles another, and then that trines another one, and then that sextiles those. And so it forms a rectangle. And this can create an immense amount of tension, and it is to really help those of us who are having dissonance or resistance to evolution. It will force this energy in, trigger an external event to force the energy in for us to have kind of this crisis in consciousness, crisis in action happen. How do I connect with my internal authority, and how do I throw off the externalized? How do I claim personal responsibility? How do I now allow what is internally, naturally existing in me be brought out into society? There can be an immense amount of confusion and feeling scared of ostracization because of this. And these are deep, deep wounds from childhood trauma, from past lives, if you believe in that, all of these kinds of things. And so some of us, this can be a really kind of shocking day for some of us. There can be a lot of psychological content that now comes and is seeded into thought as a way for us to emotionally work with it. And it really gets punched up that we are in a phase of emotionally working with these things, because at the end of this week, this is whenever Venus will go into the sign of Cancer to help us do this some more. So the reason why I bring this up is we can analyze psychological content and we can understand this is why I tick the way that I tick. But unless we emotionally go through it, we don't have evolution. We evolve through our emotions. And so right now, how I am conceptualizing this is a lot of psychological content is now being birthed into our consciousness as a way for us to work through and analyze what judgment, what is natural judgment, what is conditioned judgment, what shame am I carrying around that is I'm not supposed to be carrying it around because it's not natural. Where am I feeling guilty? That way, whenever Venus moves into the sign of Cancer, she will help us dip out of the analytics and jump into the emotional body of all of this as a way to really heal and evolve. And whenever this effect takes place for some of us, it is because we are supposed to share it later on with others to help them work through it, so that they understand that maybe they are carrying around, some things that are not natural. They are all conditioned. So yeah, this is the nature of the beast, so to say, for this super full moon. And on a collective level, we can see where different demographics of people dealing with race, culture, class, gender roles, gender rules, regulations, gender rights, all of these things are coming up. And it is this square with Saturn between the nodes. All of these kind of deep, heavy work is busting through, and on a collective level, we are saying to the not the consensus, because we are typically, like, technically the consensus, but we are saying to the authority those that be in power, you do not reflect the consensus, the majority's values, and you need to liberate from that. And there is this rebellion that is happening within the collective that is wanting so much liberation from these very old ways of thinking, because as a society here in America, it's not reflecting the people. The people here are not white men anymore. It is a melting pot of cultures and people who have different values on gender rights and all of these things, but the majority is not liking what is going on. And so this is the type of thing that we're going to be working with, that we have been. But I also feel on a collective level that something can happen during this week that is going to really be expressed outwardly about this. And I feel like it could actually be things dealing with children as well. Because with the mystic rectangle that's happening, what it is it's the sun is conjunct Mercury, and then that is trining the south node, which then sextiles that moon, which then trines the north node and Uranus, which then sextiles back to the sun and Mercury. And so I also feel on a collective level that there can be things brought up this week that pertain to like global warming, or how we treat this beautiful earth that we live on, because there is Uranian, Taurus energy, there is Capricorn natural law energy going on, there are things dealing with hidden motivations and manipulations with external authority that are going on. And so we are all being called to ask to really observe the basis of our judgments right now. That is what, if I'm going to wrap it up into one little thing, on a personal level and on a collective level, this full moon in the sign of Capricorn is here to help us reflect on the basis of what judgment means. Is it natural or is it conditioned? And there are deep, deep lessons here for those of us that are really working consciously with this. This is going to be more aha if you've been consciously working on the archetypal dynamics of this. If you haven't, there's been resistance, there can be an external event that can happen in your life as a way to force you to take a look at that. Because on a soul level, your soul is wanting you to claim your own personal authority and to change the structure of the consciousness and the conditioning that has affected the structure of the consciousness. And so this is a great time to start consciously working with this energy. So there may be some of us that are feeling really judged, that we feel like we aren't able to be seen or for who we are, that it's scary to be seen, that we're afraid we could be judged. There are some of us that are going to be working on how their family judgments have created their values, and that maybe they're seeing that those values aren't really what they on a soul natural level are feeling, are connected to them. And so some of us may be really taking a look at, is this what I believe or is this what I've been taught to believe? There are others of us that might be having a lot of dissonance occur in their life around an external authority, and really putting some type of external authority on a pedestal. And what that does is that creates a stagnation. And this can be a group of people, a community of people that maybe someone is doing this with. This can also be maybe you're doing it with a significant other. And so some of us are being, or have been, presented with information that is trying to show us the disillusionment that's occurring around the idealism that we have about maybe this group or person. And so there's been a resistance because it feels familiar. Maybe these are the same type of family values and dynamics that were playing out in childhood. And so there can be something external happen for some of us that really gets us to rebel against what we know and the familiar. And it can be shocking, and it can create crisis for some of us. What do I believe? Is this really true? And then, okay, if I'm listening to myself and I'm having discernment, then what do I need to do? How do I need to act? This can be really, really powerful for some of us. And all I can say is, if this is about these types of things, or you feel like something like this is coming up, the key is to listen to yourself, to trust yourself, to learn to discern that inner voice. And it's to simplify. It is to live in one's sovereignty. Those can be deep, deep lessons that some of us are having because we've been resisting. Because it's, for some of us, it can be, tell me who I am, show me who I'm supposed to be, and I'll do it. You know, whenever I was younger, I was really guilty of that. I have a lot of Capricorn in my chart. So lessons in taking personal authority of who I am have been really, really strong in my life. So if that's you, I just want you to know that, like, it gets better. Like, discernment and disillusionment can be really hard. But sometimes for evolution to proceed, you know, things like that can happen. So I hope you guys all use this week so constructively. I think it's beautiful energy. I know I was talking about kind of some heavier things, but the things that sometimes feel scary are the things that are really going to further our spirituality and our personal growth. And personal growth is spiritual in nature. Whenever I say that, I think some of you guys have heard me before. You can be atheist and still be spiritual. If you're growing and evolving, you are on a spiritual path of some sort. And it's just maybe not the way that consensus defines it. So I just want all of us to really connect with our sovereignty this week, and to really feel empowered by naturally expressing who we are. The best way you can take personal authority is by just being who you are. And there are deep, deep lessons whenever those of us take the jump to do that. And it is beautiful and it is magical, and I want that for everyone. That we are here throwing off of so much conditioning and judgment and guilt and shame as a way to reconnect with who we naturally are. And for that, I think that is very beautiful. I hope all of you guys have a awesome week. If you want to know more about some of this and what else is going on this week, there is the written report. I also posted the chart Connect with me on Instagram. I'm not super active on there. You can connect with me on the Nonconformist Conscience page. I would love to hear what you guys have to say about all of this. We are living in really, really powerful times. This is a week that is going to really, it's here to help propel us. It's not here to scare us. It is here to help further the collective and to help further yourself. This is a week to connect you with whom you naturally are on a soul level. That has nothing to do with who you've been conditioned to think that you are. And for some of us, these are the first steps, and I'm so proud of those of you who are jumping into this journey of wanting to connect with who you naturally are on a soul level, and to start thinking about, is this what I really think, or is this what I've been taught to think? So have a great week, and I will talk to you guys soon.